Hello and welcome to The Wire Wrap, our weekly show where we discuss important developments ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha polls. With me today are Ajoy Ashirwad Mahaprashasta, he's the political editor of The Wire, and Omair Ahmad, a writer and senior journalist and editor of The Third Poll. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you.
The first issue we'll be taking up today is the ongoing protest in Ladakh. It's seen several mobilizations over the last year or so, and it's really intensified in the last couple of months. The prominent civil society organizations in both Leh and Kargil have come together and they have listed some concrete demands. They want statehood for Ladakh, they want rights under the 6th schedule of the constitution for Ladakh, they want a public services commission and reservation for employment for locals, and they want 2 Lok Sabha seats instead of 1 for the region. There were talks with the Union Home Ministry, but they have not resulted in anything concrete. Then they've sort of dissolved now, and that's when the protests have intensified. Recently, innovator and activist Sonam Wangchuck held a 21-day climate fast. His fast has come to an end, but it's become a sort of relay with other groups taking over. And this is now starting to get more and more attention. Ajoy, I'll start with you here. In 2019 in August, when Article 370 was read down, we saw a sort of mixed response in the region. Kargil was holding protests, but in Leh, there seemed to be acceptance of the move and even some sort of hopeful comments coming on what this would mean for the region. But over time, that has sort of dissolved, and now we're seeing discontent, particularly over what this will mean for local employment, what it will mean for the environment. So what explains this change?
So, Jahnavi, you explained the whole thing really well, but I was speaking to a few Ladakhi students who have also been part of the agitations in February, and now they're back in Delhi. So what I got from them was a sense of tremendous betrayal by the center. What, as you said, that Ladakh was one of the regions when the Kashmir was protesting against the abrogation or dilution of Article 370. Ladakh was the region which felt happy about its kind of union territory status, and they had hoped that they would get greater independence in taking decisions, which never happened when they were together with J&K. But over the last few years, in 2019, the center kind of made them happier by promising them the 6th schedule and also promise them that they will have autonomous councils which will help them take decisions and preserve their quote unquote unique culture and traditions. So what has happened over the last 4 years, as I gathered from the activists there and the students who study in Delhi, is that they feel betrayed. That's the only thing, because that the center has not kind of kept its promise of getting a 6th schedule status for Ladakh. But over the years, what has happened, they've come to realize that the previous...
Can you just explain to our viewers a little bit about what
6th schedule is? 6th schedule status is a constitutional provision for regions, especially their 6th schedule, where the government or the Indian state thinks that these are special regions where which the ecology and the traditions and the culture of which needs to be preserved in its own way, and they are given 6th schedule status where the larger Indian states rules do not kind of apply, and they have a fair degree of autonomy in taking their own decisions about how to progress. So northeastern regions, even many tribal areas, where tribal dominated areas are under 6th schedule here, and that is what the Ladakhis also hope that they will get that status, because they have an unique culture. It's a cold desert, there's an acute water shortage, it's a fragile economy, but they together the 3 lakh Ladakhis who stay in that desert, they have done a lot, and they constantly think about their ecology, unlike people like us who are sitting in Delhi, who are not bothered about environment, because they stay in those regions where they face acute water shortage, they face the direct impact of global warming, and they are always thinking of sustainability more than consumption. So this is what differentiates us from, say, people who stay in Ladakh, and that is what they feel even more betrayed, that this center has given them some a kind of messaging that that Ladakh will be developed. Ladakh will be developed, but that they've come to realize that the center here, by what they mean by by development, what they mean is the same idea of development that the Modi government has been carrying out in different parts, which is greater industrialization, opening big solar projects which will occupy a lot of land, even think of mining projects, and all these things, and make it a bigger tourist destination. So because of which Modi has the Prime Minister Modi has announced a bigger airport, and the center has also announced bigger highways, which means bigger highways means there will be greater construction, mountains will be cut, and all those kind of things. So and where the Ladakhis don't have any decision making power. In the last 4 years, earlier they had 4 MLAs, they had district councils, there's autonomous councils, they had MPs, which still had a say, and even the villagers, they had a representative who they can reach out to. But now the LG with its hand-picked bureaucrats, they're taking all decisions, and what they've also come to see that the LG and these bureaucracy, they are taking all decisions by not by discussing with the Ladakhis and the Ladakhi representative bodies, but industrialists, real estate companies who are all interested in these virgin lands, and they are very, like, naturally very, that they'll not think about what the Ladakhis think. So this complete snatching of decision making power is what has pissed them off, and because of which they are articulating all these demands, because there's absolutely no trust that the center remaining, because the center was eventually thinking that any kind of governance which and that is why Ladakh supported the center's decision to remove 370. So that is what, and this trust building process did not happen, and the center did not take any kind of efforts to kind of bring them into loop, and rather kind of ran a roughshod over their thing with this whole idea of one size, one rule fits all. So okay, we are building 6-lane or 8-lane highways in Gurgaon, so we should make that in Ladakh also, which will completely displace them eventually. Even if it becomes a great tourist destination, it will it will be completely ruined. It's a fragile economy. Anyone who has gone to Ladakh will know that.
Yeah, Omair, I wanted to bring you in on that point as well, especially Wangchuk's terminology of a climate fast. It's not the kind of thing we've seen have mass support much in India. Political decisions being, or movements being based around very otherwise what seems like, like statehood, 6 scheduled rights and things, but then putting that all under the umbrella of we're also doing this for the climate. I wonder how you see that in the context of Ladakh, but also more nationally, internationally. Is this something you think we're going to see more of?
No, I think it's actually very peculiar to Ladakh, and some of the things that Ajoy said are particular to Ladakh, which is, I mean, if you're looking at climate change, the most important outcome of it is how water is affected, right? And Ladakh is a cold desert. So there's 2 aspects that where basically Ladakh sees this much more, which is the receding of the glaciers, from which there is meltwater in which water comes. I mean, for the rest of South Asia, you've got the monsoons for the water. Ladakh does not receive the monsoons. So what it receives when it comes to watering its fields is meltwater from the glaciers. And the glaciers are receding, have been receding for the last 20, 30 years, at a fairly rapid pace. So it's much more visible to them than in a lot of other places. So he can actually use that terminology. Also, he's a good communicator, let's just say, in these type of things. But really, so water in this way comes is obvious. The other way that becomes obvious is when you have longer dry spells. as you had this winter in across the Himalayan belt. When the water finally comes, your chances of landslides, all of those mudslides, and Ladakh has now had a history over the last 2 decades of more and more of these things happening. These all happen in the context of building wider roads without really figuring out exactly where it's supposed to be. I'll say one other thing, which is that frankly, it's in the other context, one would say that the Ladakhis were very short-sighted in their support. They, for all the example of the 6th schedule and everything else, once you've agreed to write down your autonomy, you have no negotiating power left. Yes. Right? They threw away their negotiating power out of their own choice. They were not as repressed as the Kashmiris. But you see this also happening in Jammu, where many of the Jammu people are worried about local jobs being taken over and everything else. Both Jammu and Ladakh thought that they were somehow going to get more freedom by giving up their autonomy in some form or manner. They ended up losing even that. How do you recover this in the particular thing? I mean, you also have to go back even one step further, that across our mountain states, we have a problem where the plains ecology, where the plains economy is colonizing your mountains. आप यहाँ से शिमला जाए, you go to Manali, you go to Srinagar, you go through all of that, you realize that all what we call development in the mountain region is basically either for tourists or tapping into hydropower potential for electricity, again for the plains. Yeah. The money for these endeavors is coming from the plains, and
as well as the ideas,
as well as the profits going back. Yeah. So the vast majority, so you have these huge hotel chains. Where are their owners living in the mountains? No, right? You don't have the quaint or the interesting boutique places. Those could be supported by local economies and by local things. Right now, what you're having is the plains investing in the mountains and carving the profits out at the cost of people living there, totally ignoring the local ecology because they actually don't know. Like there's this classic case of this IS officer who was appointed in Kashmir a couple of decades ago. Went in the autumn and went to Shalimar Bagh and thought all the trees were dead because it was the fall. He had never seen. He had patchar nahi hoti hai na. I mean, we don't have a season. He thought they were dead. It's like, what has happened? All my thing is. So I mean, one of the huge problems across the mountain areas, and this happens even in highland Nepal. You're looking at Gilgit-Baltistan under Pakistani control, or across this whole region, is that the mountains are being ruled by the plains. Well, you can see that of Beijing and Tibet as well, right? The mountains are being ruled by the plains, by people who do not understand the mountains, have no idea of doing any form of development except what works in the plains. Yeah, and it's much more costlier to build roads in the mountains. There are other additional factors that come into play. Microclimates are far more diverse. All of those things come in. But if you're not from there, what do you care? You just put in a little more money and say, chalo theek hai, haan, losses mein thoda sa we'll make it up because people want to go into the mountains. And so you have the ridiculous situation where places like Uttarakhand are being promised more tourists per year than they have actual inhabitants. Right? Kya bakwas hai? I mean, this is basically an invasion of the mountains by the plains, and this is a larger thing that we're not assessing properly. right? And Wangchuk's climate fast, I don't know where and how it will go, but we do need a much more, a better understanding of our Himalayan states, what's necessary, what will work there. Unfortunately, this government, as Ajoy said, bigger roads, tourism, aur ho gaya, right? And that's their answer to everything. It's not going to work in Andaman Nicobar. It's not going to work in Ladakh. You need to have some kind of local import. You need democracy, but then we are the mother of world.
So that is what exactly I was saying, that they had 4 MLAs, they have none now. They've one MP who, without a portfolio, has not been reaching out, and the LG is inaccessible. Has chosen his bureaucrats there. So essentially, people have nowhere to go to with their problems. So these problems over the last 4 years just kept escalating one by one, which eventually culminated into this whole movement and protests. And these will keep happening as long as the center doesn't kind of understand the problem, that what exactly is going to be the problem, and why Ladakhis feel that they are ruining their home. So, and given the track record of the Modi government, I don't know about a single instance where the center is willing to not impose their decisions on people. Yeah, so or kind of directly engage with the people.
Yeah, and a lot of it also, it's not just the politicians. If you look at the bureaucrats, now the bureaucrats across Kashmir, and when I'm saying Kashmir, I'm saying J&K and Ladakh, these are now all Delhi people, or Delhi, or certainly not local people. So one of the ways that even when you had president's rule and you had the breakdown of democracy so many times in Kashmir, is that local people still knew the local bureaucrats in some form or manner. You know, there was some kind of thing, sadak kharab hai, please can you help, there's an issue here. That also has now been cut, right? I mean, you can't really call it democracy when it's about bureaucracy, but you had a kind of, let's say, democratic bureaucracy in that sense, that at least it was
there was
local.
a local relationship.
Yeah, there was some kind of engagement. So
now even your local bureaucrat is going around in a 5-vehicle armored convoy. Usse kaun baat kar payega?
But Omair, I was also thinking about this lack of imagination. There are so many global examples where places have been turned into different touristic spots. Even if our center, kind of our government, thinks of tourism as a great economy driver, so even then they could think of different ideas. They could think of like local, because last time Ladakhis themselves, they had so many different kind of NGOs which promoted how to kind of have a fun tourism with little water consumption, with little electric. So why can't the center promote these progressive trends? Why does it have to go big all the time?
And I guess the business interests Omair mentioned of
or
the planes
open up
do
big
come in there.
open cast mines there, or big solar projects there.
No, I mean, even solar projects could work if you design it well in consultation with local people,
exactly.
right? And see where it needs to be done. Because you need to figure out the local ecology for this. Okay, so for example, I was in Slovenia 2 years ago, right? So Slovenia has a population of nothing, right? I mean, 2 million or something, I forget exactly how much it is, or 6 million, well, very small population compared to, when we think about it in even Delhi terms or stuff like that. But it is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. And one of the interesting things they've done is try to make, like the Ljubljana, its capital city, they've made sure that the buildings the center is almost all walkable. You've limited all potential vehicle thing right at the center. Beyond that, they also are not allowing or not giving permission for sprawling real estate, like our farm culture and stuff like that. So you actually have, if you're a little further from the city center, you have high rises, but what you're not doing is tearing down all the forests and all of that. But what that means is that certainly Ljubljana, but also across Slovenia, is you have a much more ecologically based tourism thing in which people are deeply involved, and they have an enormous water culture type of thing. In the same way that you could do this with Ladakh, right? You could do this with Kashmir, with all of the springs, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's the base of a large ancient lake, right? All of the relationships, all of the cultural attributes of the Kashmir Valley, whether Hindu, Muslim, it doesn't really matter. I mean, all of the springs and all are holy or sacred in their own way. You have these cultures of water, and these are going to be incredibly important as forms of tourism, as ways to attract people. I mean, Slovenia is a great model. We could replicate models like that in Ladakh, in Kashmir, but you need to involve locals, and you need to think that this form of profitability is a wiser form of profitability than yaar sadak bana do, bada sa hotel bana do.
And next year will look good.
And we also learn from our own mistakes. Look at what we have done to our hill stations in Nainital, Mussoorie, or even in Sikkim. So many we've done, like, completely damaged the ecology there.
We have to wait and see if this is a conversation that catches on. We've got some rather unhopeful outlooks from the both of you, but I guess we can cross our fingers. I'd like to move now to our second topic of discussion. We're very much in the throes of the elections now. Dates have been announced. The model code of conduct is in place. Parties have started releasing their candidates lists. Some nominations have also been filed. Even in the last week, we've seen candidate lists being released. In terms of the BJP's list so far, we've seen sort of a mixed bag. There are a lot of repeat candidates, but then there are also people who've just switched over from other parties who've been given tickets. There are some new faces that are considered big names like Kangana Ranaut. And then there are some names that have been dropped. A few union ministers like Ashwini Chaubey. Varun Gandhi has not been given a ticket again, though he hadn't really been towing the party line. So Ajoy, I wanted to ask you, are you seeing some sort of message in these lists?
So BJP, Jahnavi, always works with different kinds of strategies and all at once. So it doesn't have like one single kind of strategy or tactic to deal with. It has what it has done. So we recently saw how a lot of MPs were also deployed in Madhya Pradesh elections to contest assembly elections. And now we are seeing that, okay, Manohar Khattar has been asked to resign to contest the Karnal MP seat. Similarly, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, who's chief minister, denied his fourth term there. So he's also been brought in. So BJP does all these things. It will always have a mix of celebs, Bollywood celebs, or will deny a few people. It will try, despite the fact, what it does, it has. BJP should be credited for being very receptive to the noises on the ground. So, for example, in Karnataka, while in UP it thrives on Hindu-Muslim polarization, it is not necessarily thinking on the same lines in Karnataka, for example, now, after this big loss to the Congress. It lost, and even the Prime Minister tried to kind of polarize along religious lines, but Congress came to power and has been picking up only these small issues, doing the same thing. But now it has taken out Anant Kumar Hegde, Pratap Simha, Nalin Kumar Katil, these kind of fellows who are known for their very aggressive militant Hindutva stances, and is now thinking more kind of unideological, if I may. Because it has also kind of, so it sees that, okay, it may not be on a good enough wicket in Karnataka like all the last Lok Sabha elections. So it is also doing a lot of things. It has again kind of brought in Janardhan Reddy of this Ballari mafia, mining mafia fame. So what happens to BJP's, so and here in Delhi we keep hearing Prime Minister that okay, we are the ones who are running a kind of campaign against corruption, while the India Alliance is coming together of all corrupt parties. So what is the BJP doing in Karnataka by bringing in Janardhan Reddy, so who was incidentally a BJP member, but the BJP had distanced, yeah, dropped him, distanced him, but they still worked with his family unofficially, but formally no. So these are the things that BJP has been trying to do. So and it's like eventually what BJP's campaign, according to me, is a lot of uh, hawai batein. There's a lot of gas in the. They are still the single largest party, and they may go on to win a majority by itself. But this whole idea, the campaign of Mission 370, that BJP will win 370 seats. I seriously don't know how it is going to win 370 seats on its own, because if you look at like the candidates list, so BJP is contesting in around 450, 460 seats, out of which around 90, 95 seats are those seats where it doesn't stand a chance at all. These are places in the south, and BJP does not have a ground presence at all in these 90, 95 seats. So and has never won an election there, and neither does it have good leaders or an organizational presence. So which from for 453, if you reduce 95 seats, so say around 100 seats. So BJP is actually contesting 360 seats. How is it supposed to win 370 seats out of 360 seats? It kind of amuses me. But yeah, this is what BJP has mastered, what is now called election machinery. It has a big ecosystem which speaks in one language, which gets its messaging right, whatever it is. And on the other hand, and it is still seeking its kind of third consecutive term under Modi, and right now is the single biggest party. But what the opposition is, what list is what kind of interests me right now, because they are for the first time focusing on winnability of candidates like never before in the last 2 or 3 elections. So they are kind of looking at, they understand that okay, the media ecosystem will favor the BJP. Whatever they are trying to say will not get enough what airspace, or in the media, or in the newspapers. So they understand that, and now they are kind of strategizing at a very local level at how to kind of
Can you give some examples of this?
for example, what comes to my mind right now is in Maharashtra, for example, they are picking up local. I don't remember the names exactly. I can check and look it. But in Maharashtra, they are picking local candidates who are very popular there. For example, in Jaipur, the Pratap Singh Kacharia who has been nominated to fight the Jaipur seat, which is considered a safe seat for BJP. Kacharia is probably the most popular Congress MLA in Rajasthan, but they fielded him, but he was always seen as a local MLA, not an MP candidate, and they've removed these dead horses like Sudhir Sharma, who's neither here nor there. And what Congress has also done is they have in the last rounds of India alliance talks, they have conceded a lot of space to their regional allies, because they understand that elections will eventually be local, and the road to Delhi will pass through the states, and they need to perform well in a few states, Maharashtra, Karnataka, so that the BJP doesn't kind of, their strategy now seems to be clear, that they don't want the BJP to cross the majority mark, and they want to kind of restrict it to around 220 to 30, which was originally Nitish Kumar's plan when he kind of tried to stitch together the India alliance. So let's see how it goes. But what I believe is that the India alliance still needs to offer something serious to build a campaign around serious issues and take it up convincingly to present themselves as a credible alternative in front of the BJP. While and will have to do it under the given circumstances where money, muscle, resources, everything is against them. So they have to find out ways. It's already been 10 years that Narendra Modi has been in power, but the opposition needs to figure out ways, and 10 years is a lot for them to kind of sit together, chat and joke about chai pe charcha, and think about ways how to reach out to people. And but for that, what they need is like offer some serious agenda which has the potential to take on this BJP's Hindutva and big development juggernaut.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I'd say, there is a certain logic for their 370, 400, whatever. 370 is obviously a play on Kashmir, and so you get the bogey of communalism always. I mean, that's just taken for granted when it comes to the BJP. But in reality, I think what's clearer with their 370 or 400 mark is them saying that our great thing is we are staying in power and we are going to extend our power. This is not an ideology, it's the ideology of power. Basically, कि हम हैं और हम रहेंगे और हम और बढ़ेंगे. That we are always going to expand and get more and more powerful. And in a state like India where Sarkar is important even for a small thing like Bijli ka connection, that projection of the BJP that we will rule everything is hugely important to convince, let's say the middle voter who's like, I don't like this guy, but mujhe kaam nikalna hai. I have to get my work done. And so this projection of the BJP as total dominance, that doesn't matter what happens, we were going to, not only did we dominate last time, ab aur bhi chad jayenge, that is, it's an important messaging tactic to say that either be on our side or you're not going to even get, your balti of pani from the local tap, right? It's hard in a way for the opposition to find it, because even if they have a good idea, the BJP can very easily take that idea and repackage it. You look at the guarantee. You look at the COVID vaccine thing. I mean, initially the government refused to have free vaccines. It was only because of the opposition that they were forced to give in and do free vaccinations, or even that for certain things. And then, of course, they said, "Look, we gave free vaccines." It was the exact opposite of what they said, but they have the agility and the capability to do that. So one of the questions is for the opposition is what in this case, like again the idea of the payment, the basic payments, the universal basic income was first pushed by the Congress, and then the BJP has taken that over as something which is their own. They're very flexible in being able to do that. So what is it that the opposition can present in such a scenario where you're dealing with absolute power and you're dealing with a machinery that can take all of your ideas and repackage it as its own and resell it? There you need for want for a better thing, you need an idea. You need to say why we have a better idea of India, right, than these guys. And that's something it's hard to do, but it's actually, you go back to those ads of Mile Sir Hamara Tumhara, those were genius. I mean, they were an evocation of, unity in diversity, all of that stuff. The fact that we actually enjoyed, as Indians, learning about other forms of India that were exotic even to us, right? कि कैसे किस ज़बान में बात हो रही है, whatever, what's this dance form, all of that. The brutalization of the Indian development story into just roads and big infrastructure. Is this I mean, this is the question that the opposition needs to be putting forward. Is like, do you think the glory of just bluntly ask, you're talking about Ram Mandir and you're inaugurating an unbuilt one? I mean, is this the glory that what is this? Kya guarantee? What have you actually managed to deliver? Is this in India, or is it a really, really cheap copy of whatever you thought the Firang glory is, right? You look at Vande Bharat, right? I went from here to Banaras and back. The whole way on it only goes at 115 or whatever, 120 kilometers an hour, which is what the Shatabdi used to do, right?
The tracks have not been changed.
The track,
you can keep bringing trains which can run at 220 or 250 kilometers, but if the tracks are not changed, it will still run at 60.
And all the way there's like kachra from Delhi all the way to Banaras, kachra on this track from here to there, some guy taking a dump on the side of the tracks, whatever. This is what your Vande Bharat shows you. Is this the India really that you want? And on both sides of the thing, the kachra on the outside, or this, this thing that supposedly is this really super fast train, but is actually just a Shatabdi once again, right?
So I often joke that this whole NRI vision of India has taken over governance in India. So the center seems to be more driven by how the NRIs would like to project India in the US or in Europe than by what are the demands of your own people here and what are what are the immediate needs that you need to cater to. So while we have like several welfare programs which are kind of tangible ration, tangible things, but if you look at the state of education or the health, public infrastructure, they are all in tatters, even worse than what it was in 10 years. While our Prime Minister keeps inaugurating AIMS, it doesn't have doctors, it doesn't have paramedical staff, but they are just buildings everywhere. They're just buildings everywhere, which may look the whole area a little more fancier, but it's actually useless. So that is barring a few aims here and there, the new ones. So none of them is functioning well. So all these things, they have to be raised by opposition parties. That is exactly what I'm saying, because the center is decidedly big infrastructure. The center is decidedly pro-Hindutva. So what the opposition can do they are different from this vision. So what it can do to send across that message in a more coherent way, so that people it reaches people. So first thing, I feel they need to kind of start reaching out to people. As a reporter, when I go to cover elections,
not a lot of time left.
not a lot. They've wasted a lot of time also. But generally, when I go as a reporter to any village in UP or Bihar, I find BJP workers engaging with people with their own agenda, but not many from the principal opposition party, say the Congress. During elections they are active, but on other days, like, they are nowhere to be seen. So unless and until you establish channels of communication for whatever you want to say, that is the first and most basic thing. So let's see what happens.
In some places, less than a month left of campaigning. So
but right now, like, the candidates pe charcha is a good thing that is happening. We have like a little bit of all these Kangna Ranaut, Govinda is supposed to kind of probably contest.
Is Govinda supposed to contest? Oh,
Against her. And so these are like some colorful stories that we kind of keep doing, and also that keeps our interest in elections. So,
but you know, it's again you come back to this. A lot of these candidates that are being projected, they're empty candidates, as in they don't have any. There's no political vision behind it. They haven't. They don't have a history of doing any work or anything from the ground. It's interesting about that because what you end up doing is in saying that actually there is no political vision. You know, it's a totally disempowered local. The MP or the is only going to do what the boss says.
Boss says, so exactly what you're saying, that the candidate, the BJP's candidate list may kind of give you certain impressions about what is, but it's the BJP's campaign is all about brand Modi. Yeah, and he will in a few days will come and ask, don't look at candidates. Candidates are just our foot soldiers, just believe in me and vote for me. You don't bother about candidates. Yeah. Last time he said, so I think he'll remind people that I'm still here, and he is indeed very popular. And the whole BJP's campaign is centered around him and his brand and nothing else. So
yeah, so I guess we only have another month to see how this goes. I think it's time we move to our concluding topic for the day. On Monday this week, the UN Security Council has passed a resolution on a ceasefire in Gaza. We are now at the end of March. The violence started on October 7. This resolution has passed because the US decided not to veto it, which is what it's been doing all along so far. And now we're at a time where approximately 30,000 people have died in Gaza, though people are saying it's getting harder and harder to get a count. For the people who are surviving, there are food shortages, there's a healthcare crisis, there's a sanitation crisis. South Africa's genocide case at the ICJ against Israel is pending, and then the court did release these provisional measures in January where it said Israel needs to make sure the Genocide Convention is not violated. Omair, you have written about how we seem to be witnessing some sort of global indifference to what is happening. Can you talk a little about that?
Well, there's two parts to it. There is an indifference is one aspect. The other is an over engagement to a certain degree. That there's an over engagement in making sure that the message is right versus what you can actually do. And in the case of Gaza and Israel, or Israel and the Palestinian territories overall, ever since Oslo, Europe and America have basically just largely allowed Israel to set the terms of the agenda. And once Rabin was assassinated and Netanyahu became prime minister, the terms of the agenda were anti-Oslo, right? So, I mean, in that sense, the denial of any kind of sovereignty to the Palestinians was the policy, was a de facto policy. The Europeans and the Americans every once in a while, popped up to say two-state solution, but it meant nothing, right? Everybody knew it was just
wasn't something that actually put any force behind.
Yeah, I mean the first time actually that you're actually seeing anything of that happening is some sort of sanctions against settlers in the West Bank, and these are 4 or 5 people. When you have 700,000 illegal settlers there, right? And when you have settlers in the cabinet as cabinet ministers and all, these are crooks, right? These are criminals by definition. They are criminals, and yet you accord them certain legitimacy. I think there's a huge. You also have to realize that in the Middle East, you've seen now the Iraq war, you've seen the Syrian civil war, you've seen the collapse of Libya and its thing. You've seen the all of the whatever the color revolutions, whether it's in Egypt, Tunisia, all of these have been rolled back. You've seen the unending war in Yemen now for a decade. There is an exhaustion with actually managing any of these conflicts. That said and done, actually the most interesting thing about the US not vetoing that resolution was what Trump said a day later. And Trump has always been, how do I say it? He gave Netanyahu whatever he wanted in a sense, and Israel at that. But whether it's moving the embassy to Jerusalem or even the Abraham Accords, but he said, "Oh yeah, they should have wrapped it up." Right now, this is interesting because the hyper-partisanship in U.S. or European politics, where any non-support of Israel is seen as anti-Semitism, has been very deftly used by Netanyahu to make sure that if one side doesn't back you, you're scared that the other side will get. Yeah. Now suddenly both sides are, in fact, the opposition is saying they should have wrapped it. America, which has the largest Jewish community out of Israel, and which is the single most important supporter, the single greatest diplomatic, economic, and military ally for Israel, is suddenly saying on both political parties that, A, what's the end goal? Yeah. And you are not being able to manage it. The worst thing for Americans, and actually it's even worse for, because Israel also has this in their culture, is to be a loser. And what is now being seen after 5 months of war is that Netanyahu has no strategy of winning. I mean, other than possible total genocide. And that's not really...
It doesn't really seem to be that the aim is anymore to rescue hostages or...
There doesn't seem to be Netanyahu has released no public thing on either the day... there's one, totally risible thing that, okay, this idea or that idea. There's been no public discussion on anything. And it's only total victory. There is no definition of this total. Netanyahu seems to be sticking to power only as a way to stick to power, and continuing the war only. There is total distrust of what his motives are in Israel and overseas, and there is you're just seeing this pathological machinery that keeps going on, and there's what will it need? Well, 30,000 dead, 50,000 dead, 100,000 dead, 500,000 dead, because all of these are possibilities. It can go up to any of those numbers. Yeah. If you have an uncontrolled famine, you have a breakout of disease, it's very easy to have hundreds of thousands dead, and that's an endpoint which is very hard for anybody to negotiate. You already have Spain, Ireland, and Slovenia moving to recognize the Palestinian state. The US campaign has only just started. It has 8 months to go. Yeah. Will Netanyahu manage to finish this war off in the next couple of months? If not, then you're looking at a whole campaign, American campaign, in which the Israel's war in Gaza will just dominate headlines. And you've already seen this with the unaffiliated candidates being put up against Biden. It'll become more and more. And the other thing is, Trump is deeply, part of his base is very much is very much an isolationist base. You have to realize that he is one of the first American presidents who have not opened up a war in a war front during their time.
Absolutely.
Also, he's got quite a lot of anti-Semites in his base, right? That's going to be they at some point are just going to say, why are very crudely, they're going to start asking, why are we good Christians giving money to Jews, right? At that point, if it tips over to that level of racism in the American presidential debate, and it's just around the corner, it's not very far. This is the biggest political diplomatic disaster Israel has ever seen, and I'm even counting the attack on October 7th. Because this is a self-inflicted wound, and it's going to be very hard for them to recover from that.
Yeah. We've already crossed time, but Ajoy, just very quickly, I wanted to talk about India's location in this whole thing.
Yeah.
So right after the October 7 Hamas attack, we had Modi coming out with a statement of complete solidarity with Israel and Netanyahu. Now, historically, India has been very much aligned with the Palestinian cause and has had relationships with Palestine. But under Modi, he has developed very close ties himself with Netanyahu. After Modi's initial statement, the Ministry of External Affairs sort of had to come in and say that, no, we still will support Palestinian sovereignty and sort of nuance that. But even then, India abstained on the first UNGA resolution on a ceasefire. It later voted yes in December, and two months later, once the toll had already reached 18,000, which was more than 10 times the toll of the Hamas attack. What explains this changed position?
Yeah, so as you rightly said, that India has had historical positions supporting the Palestinian cause. But ever since Modi has come, he has developed great business ties with Israel and has this propensity to kind of compare the Indian progress with the way Israel too has progressed in the military, in their defense sector. So we have great ties with, and Modi himself visited Israel, which itself was a very political statement on how India is looking at it, and that exactly explains what India has been doing ever since this October crisis happened. It doesn't have a very as much as the MEA or Minister Jaishankar tries that our stand says that our stand is very clear. It is not unambiguous. It's unclear to me, to an observer who covers, who looks at diplomatic relations from a very kind of domestic politics perspective. So, so it's very unclear, because right now, if you see the UNGA resolution that it supported, almost 80% of the countries supported it, and UNGA resolution we all know are non-binding. So you can easily, it's very convenient for India to kind of support those resolutions which are not binding on Israel, and until and that's the same vote where US abstained from it. Before that, when UN vetoed it, so India mostly gave statements which looked like they were supporting the US stand in it. So, but what Jaishankar made clear in the UN Human Rights Council in February was that they are against terrorism, while also saying that they have historically been in favor of the two-state nation. So whatever, so terrorism, what for me is like, what is terrorism, for example, what has been happening ever since the first Hamas attack is like is like almost daily level of unleashing terror by the Israeli state, unleashing terror on the Palestinians. Almost nearly 30,000 people have already been killed, out of which 10,000 are children. A lot of humanitarian organizations are already talking about it, but India, which claims that under Modi it has grown in stature at a global level, doesn't have a clear position on it. Even when the other bigger powers like Russia, they have clear positions on it, even the US, but India doesn't have. So how do we explain this? This whole terrorism thing is defined is or kind of slapped at non-state actors. So while Hamas can be seen as a terrorist act, Hamas's attack, the Israeli state's attack will not be seen as terrorism. So for me, I see it as a say pro-Israel position where terrorism has to be condemned. So which by global definitions has to be an act performed by non-state actors. So in a way kind of relieving the role of Israeli state here. So this is what he said, and what he does is what India, for example, this UN security resolution thing, India did not have a response. It generally has response for each and every development on everything. India did not come out with a response. Plus, India has, what Jaishankar also said is that we are looking at this from a very humanitarian, from the perspective of humanitarian crisis, is kind of taking away all the political and historical aspects of the whole warfare there. It's or of the conflict there. So humanitarian, yes, okay, India stands for humanitarianism, but where is the question of justice? Look at South Africa, what it did. It kind of aligned, it invoked the Genocide Convention as against the international humanitarian law, which Israel itself was talking about, that the whole conflict should be taken up as from the perspective of international humanitarian law and not Genocide Convention. But South Africa showed, which Siddharth Varadarajan also wrote in his piece, that South Africa showed a way how national interest, by invoking Genocide Convention, national interest could be aligned with questions of global justice, which India clearly has not done. India is still looking at the whole thing from a very business-like perspective, and not through the lens of where justice lies, or even this ceasefire thing. So ceasefire is fine, yeah. Ceasefire has to be looked at. Is a humanitarian cause. It's, yes, of course, it's a humanitarian crisis there. But I feel that it also needs to be, India as a prominent state, and especially in the global south, needs to kind of come up with a more determined stand for the cause of justice, that, and it needs to be kind of it needs to be more clear about it. To me, it is not clear. It's playing both sides right now. Yeah.
Okay, I think we will wrap up here for today. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope you'll watch again next week.